Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today as we continue our Lunch and Learn series. So the idea behind this series is to provide attendees some valuable training on how to keep yourself secure, your friends, your family, your personal equipment, whatever it may be, in a variety of different places. So whether that means you're on a work trip, a family holiday, or perhaps just transiting around London, different places call for different precautions. I think we can all agree on that. So this is the second in our series. Last month, we brushed up on airports and the 3 lines of packing and what that means. What do you have on your personal possession? What goes into your backpack? What goes into your suitcase? However, we understand that transit travellers aren't just confined to the airports. Places like tube stations, bus terminals, these are hot spots for crime, as many will know who live and work in London. So we thought today it'd be good just to expand on that a little. So today's session, as was mentioned there, will once again be roughly 20 minutes long with an opportunity for Q&A at the end. Today, I'm pleased to announce Jim, our physical security consultant, will once again be joining us. He's going to run through his presentation regarding transit travel alerts and provide those tips to help keep yourself safe when transiting. As mentioned, a chance for questions at the end, but without any further delay, over to you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Connor. For those of you who were able to make the last Lunch and Learn, which was 3 lines of packing, I'll be looking to you for answers. I've got a list that I'm comparing to the attendees to this one. So if I ask your name, I'll expect the correct answer. Okay. So today we're talking about travel hubs. Okay. So in the best tradition of training, I'm going to go through my aims. We're going to discuss potential problems you might encounter at travel hubs, provide a few tips at those hubs, which ultimately is just intended to improve your ability to plan travel. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading them out, even though I just did. So I'll give you a second to absorb them. I'll wait till Connor's lips stop moving because I can tell he's finished reading them. Okay. All right. And they've stopped. Brilliant. So as Connor said, we're going to focus on these sort of travel hubs. So stations, I appreciate that not a lot of people use the National Express these days, but if you've got younger kids who are away to festivals, the festival season started, they might be using buses, mainly focused on stations, particularly relevant to underground stations. For those people who've just joined us, thank you for joining. There's a little bit more about airports only because they're a little bit more complicated. So we might spend just slightly longer discussing airports than we will discussing stations. Okay, so in the best tradition of everything, we start by planning. So before we do any travel, we plan, and some of the best reference guides you can use are some of the FCDO sites. It's particularly good is the Aussie Foreign Office site, but another great resource is people that you work with. So check what travel apps you need. That's it. Bear in mind, most of us use smartphones when we travel. You're going to need some apps. Most people will be familiar with Uber, and you'll be familiar with, if you travel sort of particularly in Europe, you'll be familiar with using Bolt. But there are a few funnies. So there's GG, which is an app you'll use in Armenia. Let's is another kind of travel app which is similar to Uber, which you might use if you travel to Moldova. There is a problem with Let's in that it always defaults back to using cash. So unless you're carrying currency, local currency with you, and using Let's to book travel, please make sure that you change it to a card every time, or you're going to have a difficult conversation with an either irate taxi driver. Yandex Go is another option. Some people don't like installing Yandex on their phone, but it is the only choice in some places. And again, other things as well as that sort of private ride sharing, you can use public transport apps. So Prague, for example, has got the PID app, which is really great. So you can buy like a 30-minute transit ticket and just scan it. For those of you who know Prague, one of the main problems is people don't validate tickets, and they actually, the security wait and they find tourists. So if you're in Prague, buy the stuff on PID app and then just activate it when you need to. It's just one less thing to worry about. Again, planning starts before we leave. So how you're going to communicate when you're actually in the country is really critical, particularly if you're using a smartphone for all those apps I just talked about. And you can use something called an eSIM. Most phones these days will support an eSIM. There's various different apps. So you've got Errata, you've got B&E SIM, or what a lot of like Revolut will provide you with eSIMs as well now. So buy one, activate it in the UK, and then disable it, and then reactivate it when you get into your country. Because the first thing you're going to want to do is either tell someone you've arrived, or start using that travel app to book travel from wherever your travel hub is at. And currency. So depending on where you go, depends on what currency you can actually use and what you can buy outside of that country. For Georgia, for example, you can't buy the currency outside of Georgia, so you need to get it either in a hotel or at the airport. Kazakhstan, exactly the same. If you're using something like Revolut, you might want to think about setting up a virtual card, which you can then destroy once you've left that country. So you can pay for things using your phone or that card, and then wipe it as soon as you get home. So you know that a recurring transaction won't be placed if your card's been cloned. Sorry?
Jim, just one with currency.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going, it could be Armenia, it could be, Greece, South America, wherever you are going, would you recommend having a certain amount stashed away just as an emergency? I know you mentioned taxi driver there. You get in, you expect cash. Would you say, okay, have $50 or 50 euros, just have it there stored just in case, no matter what?
Yeah, I always take some US dollars with me because, although they're not quite as valuable as they were a few weeks ago, everyone knows the value of dollar, and you can kind of get away with paying with dollars in a lot of places, even if you haven't got a local currency. So yeah, I always keep a fistful of dollars is always helpful to carry with you. Does that answer your question, mate?
Yeah. Perfect.
I've been caught out on lets more times than I would like to admit. So that is a real thing for me. Check lets, check the payment method. Okay, so this is all before we arrive. So now, someone might remember this. I don't want to choose people because it will just upset people. So you're in the travel hub. I'm going to think about an airport this instance now. So there's a lot of things we would have talked about you having to have on your person. Anyone want to guess one of those things you might want to carry with you in your pocket rather than in your rucksack when you arrive at an airport? Go on, mate.
I'd say passport. Passport's got to be up there definitely. For me.
Passport, yeah. 2 answers. Passport. Have we got any rides on a passport? Don't all jump out at once. Post them in the chat if you want to. Yeah, the more the merrier. You're not going to embarrass anyone. Okay. So
medicine, maybe
this.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So things on your person. You've hit immigration. Okay. You've activated your eSIM when you're on the plane, thinking you're all clever, and it hasn't got a signal yet. And you're at immigration. Boarding passes, definitely. Okay. If your boarding pass is on your phone, okay, then yeah, you might have saved it into whatever wallet you want. But it is really common that someone wants to see your boarding pass at immigration as well as your passport. That is not uncommon. Show me your boarding pass, show me your passport, wherever you come from. And those questions start coming through from the immigration stuff. You might also want a letter of authorization, depending on where you're going and who you're working for. If you're traveling for business in certain parts of the world, you want a letter of authorization. If that's on your phone and you haven't got access to data, you're going to be stuck. And you want that transition through immigration to be absolutely smooth. Okay, so let's focus on arrivals. Okay, like I said, don't rely on that phone. Everything will let you down when it needs to. You need it most. So some travel hubs, for example, you're thinking about documentation. Some travel hubs, particularly thinking about Tbilisi in Georgia, require physical boarding cards. Okay, so it is, if you've not been there before, you go through security and they're quite happy to let you go through security, and then you will get bounced at the immigration desk before they let you through airside, because you haven't got a physical boarding card. You have to go straight back downstairs and do it all again. So if you can print it out, then it'll save you a lot of time. The other thing with relying on technology is what happens if all your documents are on your phone and it gets stolen, or you break it, you drop it and the screen shatters, well, then you're in real trouble, aren't you? So my experience of a lot of these airports and travel hubs is you will not have a phone signal when you need it most. Okay? So printing stuff out is always preferable to expecting it to work on your phone. And you want that transition to be smooth. You don't want to upset people, okay, who have an awful lot of power over you at that time. Okay? When you arrive in to some airports, I'm thinking about Mogadishu in particular, okay, and you're entering into the MOI, into the airport, okay, you have to buy an entry visa, okay? And it's not expensive, but the price is a little bit flexible depending on how much money you produce in your hand straight away. So I'm thinking about currency, have a little bit of money with you, okay? But when they say the immigration, you need to buy an entry visa, don't produce a fistful of dollars with like maybe $200, because the price will suddenly be $50 rather than the 10 it was going to be. It also depends on the time of year and whether people are trying to save up. So, you know, religious holidays, prices tend to increase. People are saving up for gifts for their kids. Another thing that can be helpful to carry, as well as your passport, can be a passport photo, because you might need one of those for some reason. Okay. So having all that stuff ready will save you an awful lot of hassle, but particularly boarding cards, accommodation details, all that stuff that they may potentially ask for. Right. So that's arrivals at the airport, I think. So let's think about if you're now arriving at an airport, but you're departing. Again, don't rely on your phone. All those stuff ready that you're going to need at immigration, because you don't want to upset anybody and you want to make your life easier. Let's talk about lounges. Okay. Personally, I'm quite a fan of lounges. Okay.
Same.
Not because I'm affluent. Okay. Not because I'm trying to showboat to my audience here. Medical alert cards, most definitely, particularly for someone like me who's got a rather complicated medical history. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And you can wear like little wristbands as well that have got detail. They've got a phone number that you can phone. So yeah, if you like me and you've got all sorts of bits of metal in your head and take medication, then it can be handy to have that.
Sorry, Jim, just jumping on that
yes,
one there as well. You've got the medical ID you can have on your phone as well. So it's strange to pick your phone up if you have a fit, whatever it might be. Total stranger, you can pick your phone up, doesn't have to unlock it. They can see on the front screen who you are, what you need, etc.
Yeah, and when we're working on the ambulances, the first thing we tend to go for, if you can't find a medical card, will be that person's phone, and see if you can get the ICE number in case of emergency number of people, or you can pick up that if they've taken the time to fill it in, definitely that medical stuff on your iPhone. But that's a whole different lesson altogether. Lounges. Why do I like lounges? There's security between you and the rest of the airside. It allows you to relax. It allows you to put your bags potentially in a locker. It's a little bit safer than the general airside area. There's always staff there who will be available to help you. Most of them will speak English. It's somewhere to charge your device before you get on that aircraft. And the beauty of that is you always want your phone to have a little bit of charge in it. So if something does happen, at least you've got a way of communicating with someone. That brings me on to time. Okay. It is very easy to lose track of time, particularly if you're sat in a rather nice airport lounge. Anyone who's been to Istanbul, Ataturk, will be familiar with quite how big it is. It is very, very easy to miss a flight in that airport. People underestimate the time it takes to connect your connecting flight if you get opposite ends of the airport. Some airports will have secondary security for transfers. So thinking about Schiphol in Amsterdam, you will often get your bags pulled again for a second set of scanning. So when you filled your bottle up airside, you're full of water, you will then have to empty it again and find somewhere else to fill it up. The other airports, sort of East Africa particularly, will have security before the airport, security before entry to get into the airport, security to get airside, security to get into the gate, security again, your bags all spread out and run around with a sniffer dog to get onto the aircraft. So that all takes time. You need to factor that time in order to get to the gate. These are just things you don't want to be stressed, because if you're stressed, you're likely to rush, and if you rush, you're likely to make mistakes. It's also worth factoring in if your company is booking flights for you. Night flights, I'm thinking about Prague in particular. If you are booking your staff on a flight home and you're booking them on a flight at like 9-10 o'clock at night, it might be better bumping them onto the morning flight, because if that flight is delayed or it's cancelled, there needs to be someone available in your office at midnight, 2 o'clock, who's going to be able to help them rebook a flight and book accommodation. Whereas if you had booked them on the morning flight, you would all be in work. So that's really helpful if you're looking at it from a top-down view on travellers. From a bottom-up view, as a person who travels a lot, I like to retain control over my flights. So I've got the booking references, I've got the things I can scan, I can go to people. I'm not reliant on the operations team. I like a little bit of independence. So that's departures. Now, let's talk about baggage. Right. Again, 3 lines of packing. If you're fortunate enough to travel light with just a rucksack or just a carry-on, that's great. But very often you need to travel with whole baggage. Okay. So one black suitcase is very often similar to another. One black North Face bag is very similar to another. So you want to do something to make your kit identifiable. Okay. So maybe little red ribbon or a luggage tag or whatever. However, okay, apologies if this is a picture of you. Okay, you do not want to look like you're about to storm a balcony, or because all you're going to do is identify yourself. You're going to stand out. So if you're collecting baggage, just be conscious of how people may perceive you. Okay, so that fantastic Molly day sack that you use when you're in the military or in the police, probably avoid it because you just stick out. Another suggestion is these bag tags that we're all familiar with. Take it off your kit as quickly as you can. The reason for that is that tag contains an awful lot of information that can be used by someone who's wishing to conduct surveillance on you. So it's got the details of the airport you're obviously in, which isn't something which is a secret at that time, but it's got your name, where you came from, what flight you were on, and a whole load of other details that could become useful for somebody. Okay, so rip that off, tear it up, chuck it in a bin somewhere. Get rid of it.
Numerous times I've been checking into hotels and seen that on people's bags. It'll seem to leave them on forever.
And then you know their name, you know what room they're in. So when the shift changes over and you go to the gate, the desk can say, "Oh mate, I've lost my room key. Any chance?" "Well, what room you're in?" 312. "What's your name?" "Fletcher." And they haven't met you before. And there's no photo of you, and they're not clever enough to look at the passport scan. So they'll quite happily give you a room key. And that's something we look for, particularly when we do pen testing of hotels and do security checks at hotels, is what is their process for providing you with a room key. So yeah, get rid of that as quickly as you can. So within the hub itself, pitfalls. When you arrive, you've got your bag, you've ripped your label off, you've been for a wee, you've filled up your bottle, you're all good to go. Okay, get that game face on. And you're going to go through immigration, maybe again. They might pull your bag, you've certainly got to go through customs. Okay, put your game face on. Because as you walk out into arrivals, you're probably going to be met by a wall of taxi drivers. Okay, if you're someone like me, okay, I walk out to a welcome committee a bit like that. That wasn't just for me, that was for Connor as well. But we knew it wasn't for us. First of all, because there was no red carpet, and the brass band weren't playing at the time. But after we'd spoken to a few of the people there, it transpired that we were on the same flight as quite a famous MMA fighter, and they'd obviously come to see him. But yeah, we had to fight our way out of the airport there. You don't know what you're going to walk into. It's a game face on. You're going to be met by taxi drivers. Taxi. So just be ready for that. Find a spot. Find a place to just gather your thoughts. It might be a cafe. If we're at a station, you imagine coming off the tube at Charing Cross and you don't know where you're going, for example. I've come off the tube at Charing Cross or Highgate or somewhere I'm not particularly familiar with, Hackney. I'll need to know where my hotel is. Well, I'm going to get my phone out, but I'm going to do it before I go through the exit barriers. Why would I do that? Because no one's going to run off with my phone. There's a barrier between me and the outside world. And if they run off with my phone into the tube station, then it's probably going to be a lot easier to catch them. So yeah, find somewhere to just take a few moments and sit down. There is usually a cafe somewhere. So that's Chisinau Airport. Come out of Chisinau into the arrivals. You've got the green cafe over there. Sit down, get yourself a coffee, get yourself this sort of potato-y pastry thing. Sit down, just gather your thoughts, because otherwise you're a pure rabbit in the headlights, particularly if it's early in the morning. Compose yourself.
Sorry, Jim. If it was to say like King's Cross or a tube station, like would you recommend going to? Like, would you just do it where everyone's walking around, or I take it you'd go to, a corner perhaps, or, maybe near some sort of security staff. That's where you get your phone out. You think, okay, I've got to get to point A, point B, point C sort of thing. You wouldn't just, bring it out, headphones in sort of thing. Okay, yeah, cool.
I have a real bugbear with people wearing headphones at the moment because for two reasons. The first one is it reduces your situational awareness. You can't hear what's going on around with you. And secondly, you're making yourself a target because you're walking around with probably like a £200 set of headphones on your head. These days, headphones haven't got cables, so someone can just snatch them off your head and run off. So you're just making yourself a target for crime, to be honest. But I would certainly sit down somewhere. I like to find somewhere quiet, preferably with a phone signal and something hot to drink. But it is entirely up to you. If you come out of a tube, or if you're coming out of King's Cross and you need to check your phone for some reason, then find a doorway, because no one can run past you if you're in a doorway. And I use that on the streets everywhere. I think is it every 7 minutes a phone is stolen in London at the minute. So yeah, ultimately find yourself somewhere to sit down. Take a moment. Some people might remember the Condor adverts. Just everyone needs a Condor moment. Hamlet. There's a picture of a pipe there, but other ways of calming yourself down are available. Check in with home, tell your office you've arrived safely. Think about your plan, onward travel. Okay, so you might use a linear map. You might have printed off some instructions to give to the driver. You might be using DeepL or Google Translate and work out what you're going to say to somebody. So linear maps is a whole different training session, but ultimately, it's just saying, it's kind of like map reading in the open. You think, right, rather than walking with a compass in front of you or your phone out, you say, right, I'm going to walk to that. There's 2 blocks down there and I'm going to get my phone out, work out where I am. Now I need to turn left, walk down to the park, I'll see a church on my right. And it's having that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. And again, like you mentioned, doorways, once I get to that checkpoint, so to speak, you're in that doorway and, having a look.
Yeah, if you're going to put it in a military context, before you go and you do your map check, you take cover and get back in again, if that's what you want to do. Sorry, I was distracted by someone typing. Okay, so those are the things you might just want to think about within the actual travel hub itself. Let's talk about the threats to you in travel hubs. Criminals operate in travel hubs. They are a fantastic place. There are rich pickings there. Be careful of where you keep your items and how you react to announcements. In Euston Station, they often put an announcement out that says, pickpockets operate in this area. So if you're in London and you're in Euston Station anytime in the near future, watch how people react when they say that. Pickpockets operate in this area, and people do the Holy Trinity. They tap their hand, tap their pockets to check phone, keys, wallet, and check where it all is. So you, as a criminal, you now know that I need to target that individual who's got a phone in his right hand pocket, who's looking a bit lost. Okay. Criminals also, they know that people have got expensive items with them. They're a little bit disorientated. Okay. Terrorism. Travel hubs are a soft target, and you should aim to remain in them for as little at a time as possible. Examples: Domodedovo Airport in Moscow, 2011, huge suicide attack. Again, Istanbul Ataturk, 2016, massive suicide attack. Soft target. You want to spend as little time in that place as possible. Okay, you become less of a target. Disorientation. New city, early in the morning, get on the wrong bus, getting in the wrong train, getting on the wrong taxi. Try and use bookable services that can be tracked using Bolt or Yandex Share, for example. You are very vulnerable when at that point when you leave the airport and you're waiting for your Bolt or Uber to arrive because you're stood looking at your phone, watching the car arrive, and you're not aware of your surroundings. So be conscious you don't get tunnel vision. Surveillance. So that might be either by criminals or hostile agents. It might be state sponsored. They're identifying you as a foreigner and using physical surveillance or a follower to identify you for criminal or maybe hostile actions. Or it might be, such as happens, particularly we had it in Moscow, where you've got a surveillance team placed on you to make sure you are safe, to make sure nothing happens to you because they're worried about a diplomatic incident occurring. So don't always assume they're bad guys, but always be aware of it. Talk about your digital footprint next. So as we're traveling through an airport, you want to make sure your RF signature is as low as possible. Turn off your Wi-Fi, turn off your Bluetooth, turn off everything that's being pumped out by your devices, because that can be used to identify you, what travel hubs you've been to, what Wi-Fi you've connected to in the past, and ultimately it can be traced back to your home and place of work. So kill it all, turn it all off, please. And also, if your device isn't turned off, thinking about laptops, it's not encrypted. Separation. If you get separated from someone, have some sort of rendezvous. I mean, like, I remember being about 8 years old, and my mum said to me when I went to London for the very first time, she's like, right, get on the tube. If we don't get on the tube, if we miss the tube, then get on the same tube and get off at the same place, and the tube will stop in the same place at the next station. Right. So at least you have some sort of arrangement going on. If you get separated from your traveling companion, so I'll meet you at the hotel, I'll meet you here, I'll meet you there. If you get separated from your equipment, that might be more of a problem. Boredom. Okay. Idle minds are the devil's workshop. Okay. Particularly if you're traveling with children, take something to entertain them with it. You don't want to upset your other passengers. You don't want them to get lost. For adults, I like to keep I have a carabiner on my rucksack, because I might need it, but also because I identify it's mine. But I tell you what, there's nothing that pacifies like an irritable 3-year-old on an aircraft like giving them something to play with. Or you give them if you're carrying a med kit with you, just give them a rubber glove to play with or something like that. Okay. I'm not saying you should carry a small toy trumpet with you in case you have to curry favour with a difficult child, but take a book with you to entertain yourself. Take a toy to entertain your kids or someone else's. Because that's going to make your journey a lot less stressful, and other passengers, you might even get a round of applause from them. So those are the threats that I see in travel hubs. We always focus on crime. Boredom is a big one. It just empties your bank account as fast as a terrorist or a criminal. Have we got any questions? I know that's been quite quick. Has anyone got anything that we want to share with the rest of the group while we're all here? Tips?
Squeezed it in, haven't we?
I'm not the font.
Yeah, no, just going back to what you were saying about transiting, the doorways and stuff like that's definitely something that sits with me. I don't know my way around London very well, especially when walking from A to B. Tend to get the tube even for the most smallest distances, but when I do walk, I'll definitely try and, whether it be a big bend in the road or a certain shop, whatever it is, I'll walk to that, and then I'll pull myself aside, everything's zipped away, put away. I'll then, find another safe space, then have another look again and carry on the journey, so to speak. So that's definitely something that resonates with me.
It does. And you'll be, it's a bit like hunting on the Serengeti. The lions always choose the weakest person in the herd. So if you're the person who doesn't look alert because you're following blindly a phone, then you're just attracting attention from the wrong sort of people. Okay, what I'm going to do is wrap that all up with a bit about Toro. So as you can see, I tried to talk a little bit about the physical security problems, a little bit about the people, so the people that might harm you, the ways that you want to stay safe with regards to that. And I did focus slightly on the cyber, which is your RF signature, turning off your Bluetooth, turning off your Wi-Fi, encrypting your devices, because all of that comes together and protects you more. And that's kind of what makes us different, is because loads of security companies will focus on those three and stovepipe them. So cyber will do their thing, physical will do their thing, and investigations will do theirs. But we kind of mix them all up, and it just makes you a little bit more resilient. Okay? We do that for you as travellers, we do it for businesses, we do it for governments. So hopefully that's been useful for everyone. And I'll hand back over to Connor.
Yeah, just echoing what Jim said there. He's touched on some physical stuff, some cyber stuff. All of these sessions about training people, which is the third element of what we're all about. If anyone's interested in diving a bit more deeper and understanding a bit more knowledge about how to transit around, whether it be airports, train stations, bus stations, whatever it may be, please get in touch. I'd be more than happy to assist. However, I will look to close it down. So thank you for all joining and tuning in.
Just got a quick question there, mate, from Joe about travelling alone who have a disability. As you can probably see, I have a disability. I travel alone an awful lot. And yeah, you might be right that people target people who have a disability. It depends what sort of disability it is in that respect. But if your disability is having an eye and having a head injury, or your disability is you've got a false leg, or your disability is you've got epilepsy, it's difficult to say, because you're targeting someone who's very identifiable. If someone's like if they're walking with calipers or they've got crutches, that person's very identifiable. Whereas it's often very easy as a criminal to target someone who's the grey person. I'll just target someone in that audience who's not aware of their surroundings. If you're traveling as a disabled person, very often you've really got to think about what you're doing and the process of getting from one place to another. Speaking from experience, okay, it is very hard. Often I've got to think about, right, what the steps like. Am I going to slip on those stairs? I can't take, there's too many stairs for me to walk down there. I'll need to take the lift. And if there's already someone in that lift, I might not want to get in that lift with them, because why would you get in a metal box with someone you don't know? So I do think that actually maybe you are a bit safer because you're more identifiable. You're an individual, whereas it's very easy to attack someone who's faceless. And I think even criminals have got some scruples, actually. No, that's a very big discussion. I'd like to talk about that more, but I don't think we've got time. So, Joe, I hope that answered your question, or at least I went some way to answer it.
Yeah, we can look to do a bit of research, actually, and bring stuff up.
Definitely.
The session. But thank you all for joining and tuning in. I hope you able to take something away from the session. Please, by all means, get in touch with the Toro team if you are interested in learning a little bit more. On June the 10th, we are going to discuss home security. So we're moving away from the transit travel hubs and airports, etc. So it'll be tips and tricks to keep your castle, so to speak, secure and safe. Please be sure to register, and I hope to see you there. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks.